Welcome everyone to our Clarktoberfest session, one of the last ones as part of our month-long Clarktoberfest festivities. Today's session is on the Accelerated Master's Program. We're really honored to have actually quite a large audience with us today. My name is Nick Porcella. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Clark. And I am actually an Accelerated Master's Program graduate, which is why I was excited to have this session and be the host. What I'm going to do now is we actually are joined by three panelists who are going to sort of share their experiences. But before they do that, I'm just going to have them each introduce themselves, and then I'll talk about some logistics before we get started. So I will start with Hannah.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah. I am a ADP or fifth year student in the School of Professional Studies. I am getting my master's in public administration with a concentration in nonprofit management. I'm from South Portland, Maine, use she, her pronouns. And as an undergraduate, I majored in theater arts and community youth and education studies.
Thanks, Hannah. Sheila?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheila. I am originally from Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'm currently a fifth year student in the School of Professional Studies, and I'm studying information technology. So that's exciting, Master's of Science in Information Technology. My undergrad was both in physics and in media, culture, and the arts. So I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. And yeah, that's me.
Thanks so much. And Professor Doug Little from the History Department.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Little. I've taught history at Clark since 1978, so that makes me a real fossil. My specialty is 20th century American political and diplomatic history. Over the years, I've had the great opportunity to supervise a number of fifth-year master's students in history, and also some of them have gone on to do masters in education. So anyway, it's good to, I can't see you, but it's good that you're with us.
Thank you all. And just a few logistical notes before we dive into the content today. I think the first is obviously that we're here to sort of be resources to all of you, all prospective students and families watching. So the session today is, it's a pretty easy structure. We're going to start with just some basic information on fifth year and have each of our panelists share a little bit about their experiences or, understanding of fifth year. After that, we're actually just going to open it up to question and answer, and we'll save about 20-25 minutes for that because we know there's probably a lot of questions. In terms of other notes, I know for some of you who have been to many of these Clarktoberfest sessions already, you've heard this, but the offer is still true. Any student who attends 3 Clarktoberfest sessions in the month of October can receive this free Clarktoberfest t-shirt. Not this particular one, but one of our other ones in a box in our basement. We can mail those to U.S. addresses. So if you are a U.S. address and you've been to 3 of these sessions, you get a t-shirt. So without further ado, we're going to dive in. And I'm going to phrase this actually as one basic question, but I'm hoping each of our panelists can tackle a few different things with it. But I'll give you each a few minutes. I'd love to have you sort of talk about your ADP experience with the fifth year. What is fifth year? I think especially for our students, you can start with what is fifth year and the tuition-free aspect. And then more generally, if you can share your story with us and maybe give some advice for prospective students interested. And then after I can share some about other programs that we may have missed. Hannah, I know you went first for the intros. If you're comfortable going first again, you can get started.
Sure. Well, starting off, fifth year is, or fifth year free, often known as, our ADP program, is an opportunity to get an accelerated master's degree tuition free. So if you keep above a certain GPA, and sometimes it differs depending on different programs, but if you keep above that GPA through your sophomore, and junior year, I think the second semester of your first year possibly too, you can apply the second semester of your junior year. You find out if you're accepted in the summer, and then you start taking classes your senior year. You take 2 classes, and then you stay for an extra year after graduating with your undergraduate degree, and you get a master's degree tuition free. When I first heard about Clark, I came and visited. I heard about this program, and I was like, that's really cool. And there were like 14 different areas. I was like, there's so many different opportunities here. Like, I'm so interested in multiple different things. So when I came to Clark, I jumped right in and was starting to look at the master's in education and was really interested in that from the get-go. But as I moved through my Clark career, as I got to be a sophomore, I really found my passion lies at the intersections of arts and education, more specifically informal education, so not within the classroom. So I went and I talked to the advisor for the Master's in Education 5th year program, and I was talking to her, getting her advice as to like which program's going to be best, what she thinks, and she really pointed me towards the Master's in Public Administration. She said, you know, like that sounds really great for you. You can do educational leadership as a concentration within that. You can also do nonprofit management if that's what interests you. So I immediately after I scheduled a meeting with Mary, who oversees that program, I talked to her about it, and we both decided that that program was going to be a really good fit for me. So I applied the second semester my junior year, found out that I was accepted the summer before my senior year, and then I took one class each semester before the summer where I took some more classes, and I'm currently taking classes too. And it's really, really great because you can really figure out what you want. And the professors in the School of Professional Studies are like actually in the field, really involved, and have a great connection. So I'm taking a class right now with the former mayor of Worcester, and it's a class on politics. So it's really interesting to learn from someone who has actual experience. But my advice, if you're considering ADP options, is definitely to have conversations with current 5th year students, with people who are in the process of applying, with advisors, with people in career connections. Just have as many conversations as you can, because there is valuable information everywhere. And it was through talking to different people that I was able to find this program that is really great for me.
Thanks, Hannah. I really appreciate it. And we'll stick with the current student theme. And Sheila, I'd like to go to you next. Same question. Let me know if you'd like me to rephrase any of it.
Yeah, I'll take it and run with it and see where we end up. So starting off very similarly to Hannah, I came to Clark, was touring, and someone mentioned the accelerated degree program. Unlike Hannah, I completely ignored it. I had no idea that I would want to go to grad school. I was like, let's get in here, take 4 years, be done, get in the real world, go find a job. So I think it was honestly the beginning of junior year when I started thinking about life after college, which is big and scary, and trying to figure out what that meant. And if you don't remember, my 2 undergraduate majors are physics and media culture and the arts, which are very kind of unique and not often paired together. And so you might be able to tell that I have lots of very wide-ranging interests. And so I was thinking, oh, I could, potentially go get an engineering degree somewhere, or I might just go directly into working. There's so many options. So kind of similar to Hannah again, I went and started asking questions, and I was able to speak with actually Mary as well, because I was at first interested in the Master's of Communications degree. And after talking through that, I was really interested in the School of Professional Studies for the similar reasons to what Hannah was saying, is that you have these professors who are currently working in the field that they're teaching in. So you're getting a lot of really great knowledge, you're gaining a lot of connections, and learning a lot about practical applications. And that's something that I found in my undergraduate degree that I really liked about Clark as well, was that you have a lot of useful research and you have practical applications to what you're doing in the classroom. So I wanted to continue that if I were to go on to do graduate study. So I got, I think, to 3 weeks before applications were due junior year, and suddenly someone said, oh, Sheila, I know you're really interested in computers. Did you hear that they announced a new 5th year program? And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, oh yeah, they're doing a Master's in Information Technology, and they just opened it up as a 5th year program. And I was like, oh no, the application is due in 3 weeks. What am I gonna do? So I went and talked to the program advisor, and he was like, don't worry, it's gonna be okay. Like, let's talk this through, let's figure out where you're at. And I was like, well, I'm not a computer science major. Am I still allowed to do it? And he said, oh yeah, no, of course, like, feel free to apply. just put your best effort into the application. We'll like look at your application, your reviews, and we've had this conversation, so I have an idea of where you're at. And so very thankfully, I got accepted into that program. And again, was taking classes throughout my senior year, took a few classes over the summer, and I'm now actually a ADP student, as well as I have a full-time job in the technology field. So that's been a really interesting perspective, and that's definitely not something that everyone does. I think it's, you know, some people do different things. Some people are doing research while they're doing their 5th year. So I just decided, you know, financially, this is something that's really cool, and I'm able to take advantage of this program to get the free master's, but I do also want to start that practical experience now. And thankfully, my professors have been really understanding, since they're also working in the field. So if there's ever a time where I need a slight extension on something, or I have a big project going on in a class, they've been really flexible with that. And that's been really awesome, because I'm getting the firsthand experience in the classroom and being able to translate that into my job like the very next day at work. So that's been a really exciting part of it for me.
Thanks, Sheila.
And then I was going to say, quick thing of advice. I echo what Hannah said, but also just remember that like new opportunities are coming up. So we have 14 really great ADP programs, but if you get 2 weeks before the application is due and a new one comes up, don't count it out as an opportunity, because I'm very glad that I didn't.
Appreciate it. And Professor Little, would love to hear from you on a similar topic, but feel free to expand the question in terms of faculty and what you've seen in working with students, or any 5th year ADP stories from the faculty perspective too. I think you're on mute.
All right, there you go.
There we go.
Thanks, Dick. I'm happy to do that. I do come at this topic from the other side of the desk, from Hannah and Sheila. Back in the 1990s, I was one of the faculty who was involved in sort of launching the accelerated 5th year program. And as I was saying to Nick and Sheila and Hannah before we started our little conversation, we were trying to do a better job of communicating what Clark is. I like to call Clark a platypus, you know, a mammal that lays eggs. It's part research university, it's part liberal arts college. And one of the cool things about it is that students have a chance to work closely with faculty, whether they're practitioners or whether they're more traditional academics, up close and personal. But we were finding we couldn't quite connect the two. We couldn't quite get the message across. And we came up with the idea of offering an accelerated 5th year master's program tuition free for our best students. And over the last 24, 25 years, I think we've had a lot of success. A lot of students are interested. I'm not sure what the number of students who are currently Clarkies who are currently in the 5th year program, but at one point in the early aughts, 10 years ago, it was approaching 100 out of a graduating class of 550 or 560. So quite a popular program. My experience is mainly in the history department, where we have a small PhD program and a 5th year master's program for our undergraduates. The program is slightly different in terms of how you get into it. We don't require any courses during the senior year the way that is the case in the programs that Hannah and Sheila were describing. Rather, we require our students to write an honors thesis, which we think is the best way for them to get the research and writing skills they're going to need in the 5th year. So they get kind of a running start with the honors program. They complete the honors thesis in the spring of their senior year, and then they pick an advisor, frequently the advisor who was their honors advisor, have a chat with that advisor about what kind of project they might want to do during their 5th year. We require our 5th year students to write a master's thesis, so it's important that they get a good start over the summer before their actual coursework starts in the fall. The coursework is largely tutorial, working one-on-one with faculty, either your advisor or other faculty who will be working with you on your thesis. Over the years that I've handled the students, I've had students write topics on the Korea, or do master's theses on the Korean War. I've had a student do a master's thesis on the Iranian Revolution of 1978-79. A bunch of students have done theses on the Cold War, which is sort of my area of specialization. And at the end of that 5th year, they come away with the master's. They come away with some writing and communication and research skills. but they also are well positioned, I think, to go off and do interesting things. Some of them go on to enroll in PhD programs. As we have had one of our fifth-year master's students enroll in our own PhD program here at Clark in history, but more typically, students have gone elsewhere. The most recent fifth-year student who went on to a PhD program went to the University of Connecticut. Before that, we had a student who went on to Northwestern University. So that's one track. Other students are interested in high school teaching, secondary education, and the way that the Clark Masters in Education is set up, you don't really major in education. You take some courses and in effect minor in education as an undergraduate, and then you move on to do graduate level work in the education program. Nick, I think, has been through that program and knows all the details. We've had some history majors who've gone on and done that. We've also had a few history majors go on to law school. Again, the research and communication skills and the analytical skills that you perfect in the fifth-year program are quite useful going on to law school. We also have one of our recent fifth-year students is a historical interpreter at Old Sturbridge Village, which is a, how do we describe it? It's a historical site in Sturbridge, which is about 20 miles west of Worcester, where you can go back and reenact the 1830s and 1840s. And so Derek Heideman, one of our fifth-year students, has been over there as the director of interpretation, sometimes dressing up as a blacksmith, sometimes doing some of their publications and their flyers and all of that. And then the most recent fifth-year student that I've worked with took a different approach. She did a fifth-year master's thesis on the U.S. and the Soviet Union. She is of Russian and Korean extraction, and she decided she wanted to go to Korea and teach English. And so she's currently in Korea, South Korea, not North Korea. Nobody goes to North Korea. That's not advisable anytime. But she's in South Korea teaching English as a second language. So all in all, it's been a lot of fun working with these students. You know, there's you have to take the initiative, as Hannah and Sheila were saying. You've got to get the application in. You've got to show your faculty advisor that you're excited about the program, and the end result is kind of magic, I think, whether you end up going to graduate school or law school or teaching high school, or whether you do something like going off to Korea to teach English as a second language. So I think it's a great program, and I think it's one of those things that really captures very well what Clark is. Again, Clark is the platypus, the mammal that lays eggs. Sometimes it's hard to get your head around that, but the fifth-year program, I think, is emblematic of the cool things we do here.
Thank you. And actually, I love the platypus analogy. I've never heard that before, but I can really see it. So that's my new favorite.
I have a platypus. I'll show you.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Not a real one.
Oh, I hope not. Well, Professor Little's gathering that. Oh, let's see.
There's a platypus. It's a China. It's a it's some sort of Royal Dalton platypus. So there you go. Not the real thing. Real things. Platypuses are kind of mean. They have claws and they can be difficult. But this one is just fine.
It's a good representation because Clark is pretty friendly. So not mean, but I like the analogy of the liberal arts and research university. I'm going to take that and run with it. Before we take some questions, I'll actually just mention a couple things to follow up on. Is that, as Professor Little stated, we've always had a lot of students interested in this program. The current rate of students going in is about 1 out of 3 seniors. So that amounts to be about 150 students each year who are participating in fifth year. Also worth noting, Clark is the only college in the United States that currently has this extensive of a fifth-year tuition-free program. There's only 2 colleges in the United States that have any type of program that's tuition-free in their fifth year, but Clark's is the most extensive of them. So this is why we're so proud of it and why we devote a whole Clarktoberfest session to it. So at this point, we are ready for questions. I know we have some already in, which is great, and we have plenty of time to take them. We've got about 25 minutes. So I'm going to take them in the order they came in, and I'll divvy them up between the 3 of you and myself. So the first student who's from Worcester says, would an economics major be able to do a fifth year in, say, the business program, like the management major? Does anyone can speak to that?
I can, yes. I think that is probably the most frequent destination for fifth-year students who major in economics. our economics department has a PhD program, but not a master's program. But we do have an MBA program, and I think second most likely destination would be we have several master's programs in our international development and community planning area. So those would be the typical areas, I think, the most likely destinations for economics majors.
Yeah. Sounds about right to me. Next question, ideally, when's the best time for students to start reaching out to an office about working on their fifth-year applications?
I can take that one. So like I said, I had no idea that I was even interested in pursuing the fifth year or grad school of any kind until I went like the beginning of my junior year. Applications are due for most of the programs at the end of your kind of middle to end of your second semester junior year. So I think really at any point that you would feel comfortable, you can start reaching out. So even if you get to Clark and you say, oh, I know that I'm interested in this, you can start reaching out. But I don't know if there's an ideal time, but I would say probably before the second semester of your junior year would be a good time to start that initial connection.
And we got a follow-up question to that. Maybe Hannah, if you can take this. Can you just describe how rigorous the application process is?
Yeah. Honestly, I was expecting like another Common App, like multiple like long essays, a lot of work. So when I pulled up the application, I was surprised and was like, where's the rest? It honestly wasn't hard. The purpose of it isn't to detract you or like make you not want to do it. It's to make it so that you can do the program. So it's really accessible. It was pretty easy. I was able to get it done pretty quickly. Yeah, I didn't think that it was really hard. There were like a few like quick essay questions, like how are you going to handle being a undergraduate student and taking graduate level classes. But as long as you answer those questions, it really wasn't bad. It wasn't too rigorous. I was able to do it while doing all my schoolwork and clubs and everything else.
Thank you. Sheila, I think the next question was directed to you. It's from a student who asked that you mentioned finding a job currently and that you're in the real world now. How are you balancing your fifth-year program with pursuing your career?
Definitely. So I think that that's something that each fifth-year student faces and kind of figures out in their own way. So personally, I knew that I wanted to get, like I was saying, like really involved and do something hands-on as early on as I could. So I knew that going in it would be difficult for me to do that. So I started off by talking to my professors and working with my advisor in information technology. I actually had a meeting with him and sat down and said, okay, look, I think I want to look for a job. Do you have any resources or advice for that? And do you think that's something that I can manage? And so we talked about the classes that I'd taken in undergrad and how that had gone for me. And I felt like I was able to balance pretty well my classes and my undergraduate coursework. And so he said, okay, you know what, Sheila, you have to take 3 classes to be considered a full-time student. So the decision is up to you. I think you can do it. Here are all of the resources that I have for you. Talk with your professors, like be proactive. But if you think you can handle it, that decision is up to you. So knowing that I had that support there for me, and also having the support of, people outside of school. So being able to rely on my roommate when I'm getting stressed out to tell me like, look, here's what you need to do, prioritize. That's all been really helpful. So I would say if you really, you need to know yourself. So I was helped out a lot by knowing that I had that year in undergrad where I was taking graduate coursework and being able to gauge how much each class was going to take up from me. And then when I was kind of doing my job search, I wasn't going for jobs where I knew I'd have to do like 80 hours a week or something like that. I looked for a job that had a reasonable amount of work. And I was able to thankfully find one. And I was really helped by the fact that I'm looking for a job in the area that I'm getting my degree in. So I was able to say, here's the coursework that I've already done, here's what I'll be learning about, and here's how I can apply that to the job. So I've been really lucky in that, I think.
Yeah, thank you. And we had a follow-up question about how were you able to separate yourself and get a job while in school. I think you've covered that, though. Any additional notes to share? Or I think you've covered that pretty well. Yeah. I'll defer to Professor Little on this question, but anybody's welcome to answer. How frequently do we implement new fifth-year programs?
Well, there have been a couple new ones in SPSS. We've got a new dean in that area, and he's been quite an energetic and creative fellow in pulling these programs together. I was trying to think when the last departmentally based fifth-year program was created, and I would guess it was probably one of the programs in international development, and probably 8 or 9 years ago. Departments have made a decision. Psychology is a case in point. Psychology has got a large undergraduate major and a large PhD program, and so they don't have an MA. I know they've talked about it in the past, but they don't have one now. And their psychology majors who end up going into the fifth year often end up in SPSS or end up with in the MBA program. So it's been a while since I think a departmentally based program has been created, but there are several new ones in SPSS, I think, in the last couple of years. Well, I guess Sheila has confirmed that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the two newest ones that I'm aware of are my program Information Technology, which was added to the fifth-year track when I started, so I guess 2 years ago. And then there's more recently, last year, they added the Masters of Science in Data Analytics. So there's kind of two technology-based tracks in SPS now.
We had a follow-up question. Can you say what SPSS is again? I vaguely remember what the two S's stand for, but what does it stand for?
Well, I know what the first S stands for. Well, it's the School for Professional Studies and Serendipity. I don't know.
I can't remember what the last S said, but the important takeaway is the School of Professional Studies, which is one of our graduate offices. Question for either Hannah or Sheila. Are you able to maintain the same sense of community as a fifth-year student?
I can take this one. To preface this, I think it's definitely different when we are living in a time of mostly Zoom classes, so can't fully speak to this, but based on they had mentioned this in our orientation too, that it is definitely very different than undergraduate. You're not really as able to be involved in the clubs that you were involved in because they want to make space for undergraduate students. And you're also more busy with different things, classes, finding a job. So it's definitely very different, but you can definitely still find ways to get involved in the Clark community and stay involved in the Clark community. Right now, I'm still working with one of my clubs. I'm helping out from the side as an assistant position, just so I can continue my involvement. And then still working on campus too. So I'm definitely still involved in the community, but it is very different, and it is not the same as undergraduate. They make that very clear before you're start the program that it is quite different.
Thank you. Student asked about the fifth-year program in marketing, and could we describe that program? I'm not sure. Do we have a program in marketing, or is that under the umbrella of the management program?
We have marketing and communications in SPS.
Do you know much about that, Hannah? I could describe it.
Yeah, I've taken some classes that count as marketing classes, and they're really great. A lot of it is focused on brands and social media. You can take very specific classes. I have a few friends that are in it right now, and they really enjoy it. And it's a lot of projects. It's definitely a lot of group projects working with actual organizations to do marketing for them. So it's really a really cool program, and I've really enjoyed the classes I've taken in it.
Thank you. Can any of you speak to what the most popular ADP programs are for a student who, as an undergrad, majored in political science?
I think probably the two fifth-year programs are most attractive to political science students. I say that sitting in a building where the political scientists have offices right next to mine, so I see a lot of the political science students, would be the public administration program in SBS and one of the programs in international development and social change. But some political science students do go into the MBA program as well.
Thank you. Does Clark help at all with the process if you're interested in applying for a doctorate program from the fifth-year master's program? And this student is typically looking to study psychology, but more generally, do the master's professors help with those doctorate applications?
Well, yes, they do, and the undergraduate faculty do as well. I mean, a number of our psychology majors make the jump directly from an undergraduate major in psychology to a PhD program somewhere else in psychology. And then one of the key bits of advice I guess I would give to prospective Clarkies is that we are a place where the faculty pride themselves on being approachable, but you've got to take the first step to show up when we're not in COVID times, to show up at the office door and sit down, introduce yourself, and have a chat. And over the course of your undergraduate years, you'll develop a relationship with your first year advisor and then with your major advisor. And if it's psychology, when you get to that point in your undergraduate career, probably the spring of your junior year is the moment where you'd want to sit down with your psychology advisor and say, I'm interested in going on and doing doctoral work. And yes, you get faculty are fairly friendly. 99 and 100% of Clark faculty are student friendly.
I found 100% work, so we'll round up.
Well, you've got to be a little bit of a weasel. You've got to leave a little exit just in case it should turn out that isn't true. You could say, well, there was a 99% certainty, but there was still 1% uncertainty.
I love it. The next question is relevant to, I think, beyond fifth year, but we can keep it within the scope of fifth year. We're not. For anyone here, does Clark partner with any companies or programs within certain majors that help you with your early career?
I can start with this one.
Mm-hmm.
I know for the fifth year program, it's a new requirement, but you're required to do an internship now. So I did my internship over the summer with Tower Hill Botanical Garden, which is right nearby. I did it with the education department. I loved it. But I didn't know what kind of internship to find. I had no idea what I was doing. So I went, and they have people in your specific office. So the School of Professional Studies has someone specifically focused on internships and helping students find internships. And they have connections with every organization you could ever think of. And so I went and I had a meeting, and I was like, this is what I'm interested in. And she wrote down a list of like 10 different places, helped me craft an email of what to send to these places, had sent me to somebody else within the office to help with my cover letter and my resume. And then our internship class was talking about like getting jobs, what it's like to actually work. And I feel like a lot of the program is really focused on making connections, networking, and preparing you for life after Clark. So I know when it comes time to find a job, which is coming soon, I can go right back to Mary, go right back to the office and sit down and be like, this is what I'm looking for. This is the area I'd love to be in. Can you help me with finding connections? And on top of that, you can still use all the Clark resources that you could use as an undergraduate student, like Clark Connect and Career Services, which is great.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions coming in, and which is good. We've got a few more minutes left. Can one of you speak to or sort of refresh our memory? What makes you eligible for the 100% tuition remission for the accelerated degree program? And are there other specific requirements to get that?
So
well, go ahead.
I was gonna say I can try to tackle this one. I believe so. The GPA requirement does vary depending on what program you're interested in. So if you go to the website, you can find out the specific information. So, for example, with the School of Professional Studies programs, I believe it's a 3.5 GPA or I believe it's 3.5 GPA that you have to maintain, but some programs do need it to be a little higher. Some programs are a little bit more lenient than others with that GPA requirement. For the tuition remission, that has a little bit to deal with your undergraduate years. So if you have been a full-time undergraduate student at Clark, so not a transfer student, for your entire undergraduate career, then you are eligible for that 100% tuition remission. If you have the GPA eligibility as well, and you continue through your senior year with the program and the GPA eligibility, that's where you get that 100% tuition remission. But that doesn't mean that if you are a transfer student that you're completely ineligible. So you are still eligible to receive certain levels of tuition remission, and it depends on a little bit more case-by-case basis.
Yeah, well said, Sheila. I appreciate it. And from admissions perspective, the number we always go to is actually a letter grade, and we typically say most programs are looking for a B+ average, which amounts to usually 3.4, 3.5, depending on the program. We have a couple more questions. I want to just give a couple announcements so I don't forget them. Again, if you have future questions on not only ADP, but also anything Clark related, the email on the screen is always valid, admissions@clarkview.edu. And I'm going to find the shirt, which now is falling on the floor. Remember that if you've been to 3 Clarktoberfest sessions and you have a US address, we do ship you a lovely shirt. But that's sort of my last announcement. So with our last couple minutes, we'll take our remaining questions before we sign off. So for anyone here, what type of GPA do you need or is recommended to get into the 5th year program? Can anyone go into a little more depth as to what that might look like?
Well, in history, it's a 3.5, and I think for most departments, it's a 3.5 for your last 3 years. So your first year, I think there's a recognition that making the transition from high school to university can be rough, and we don't want to penalize you if you have a tough year transitioning. So it's the GPA for your first, well, your sophomore year, your junior year, and the first semester of your senior year. And then the presumption is the second semester of your senior year, you will maintain that grade point average. But it's a 3.5 in history, and I'm pretty sure that's what it is in other departments as well. And the grades are, an A is 4 grade points, and a B is 3 grade points. So a 3.5 puts you right between an A and a B.
Thank you. So at this point, I'm just taking a look at the chat here, but any of our panelists have any additional notes on 5th year or anything to share while I'm sort of making sure I got all the questions? I guess we covered it all. So I don't see any additional questions in here, but I will say again that if anyone has future questions, again, admissions@clarkview.edu is always valid. And really, thank you to all our panelists for being here and taking time out of your day, and also to all of our attendees. We're really honored that you spent some time with us. We know Zoom fatigue is a real thing, and so we're honored that you chose to spend a little extra time with us. So Clarktoberfest is a few more days, and we're really grateful for everyone here. So thank you again for attending, and we'll talk to you soon. We're going to sign off.
Adios.
Bye.
Nice to see you.